So with that, let's get started. Thank you all for joining us here today for the Reusable Revolution, the Benefits of Reusables in Restaurants webinar. We are joined by some lovely speakers today. So first we'll have Julie Wedge from who's the California Program Director for ReThink Disposable. And then we'll also be hearing from Leif Gildersleeve, who is a restaurant owner for the Flying Fish Company, a seafood restaurant based out of Portland, Oregon. By myself and Bella Garcia, I'm the Program Procurement Manager for Center for Environmental Health. We have a packed agenda for everyone here today. So first, I'll be speaking about why reusable foodware, the benefits of it, things like that. And then I'll be following it up with how to find non-toxic foodware, as well as tips and resources for restaurants looking to make the transition to reusable foodware in their own restaurants. I'll then be passing it over to ReThink Disposable, where they'll be sharing some case studies as well as outreach summary from their work with restaurants in the California area. And then we'll be following it up with the Flying Fish Company for a restaurant perspective. So Leif will be giving us more information on what it's been like to roll out some reusables in his restaurants. There will be a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to use that throughout this presentation if you have any questions, and we'll have some dedicated time at the end to share those things out. For anyone here, the Q&A option is located at the bottom of your screen, so feel free to use that for any of your questions. If you're having any trouble, you can also use the chat, but the Q&A questions will be the ones prioritized. We also have a poll for everyone just to get you all situated. We are hoping to eventually make this into a full webinar series. So this poll will be useful in making sure that some of these future webinars will cover some of these topics that you all are interested in learning more about. So with that, I will launch the poll and we can begin. So as a little bit of information, so the first question in the poll is, how often do you eat at restaurants? The next question is, which industry best describes you? So this option is really to get us to know who's all in attendance and better be able to tailor this webinar series for the people who are interested and just learn a little bit more about where they're coming from. And then the final question is, which topic are you most interested in learning about? So this again will help us just to tailor some of these future webinar information to some of these topics that people are learning more about. Hopefully we'll cover some of these and answer some of your questions around these in this webinar, but if not, stay tuned for some future updates and we'll dive a little bit deeper into some of these questions in the future. This poll will be open throughout the duration of the webinar, but just wanted to give you all some chance in the beginning here to answer some of these questions. And so with that, we'll jump in. So first, we're going to do a little bit of background on Center for Environmental Health. We are a nonprofit with the mission to protect public health and support decision makers. This is really to help consumers avoid some of these toxic chemicals that are present in everyday products. I specifically am with the procurement team, so I work with large purchasers. That is a wide variety, but it includes state governments, restaurants, K-12 schools, stadiums, hospitals, and more, all really to promote reusable foodware and to provide support for some of these partners looking to transition towards reusable and safer foodware options. So the first question is, why reusable foodware? What is the importance of it? Why is it something that we care so deeply about? Many people are aware of the environmental impact. So first of all, did you know that the United States alone uses 1 trillion disposable foodware items annually? And so if we think about this on a global scale as well, this is a ton of waste generated from products that are used for only a few seconds of the day sometimes. And this generates massive amounts of waste. This can pollute landfills, waterways, create litter in our cities, things like that. But what many people aren't aware of, or is not necessarily as top of mind, is the health impacts. So many single foodware items can actually contain harmful chemicals, and these harmful chemicals can leach into the food and affect human health. Even some of the compostable or other types of bio-based foodware products can still contain chemicals such as PFAS as well. So we really just wanted to highlight how there's these impacts that these products can have, and it can really affect human health just across the whole spectrum. One of the most important things that we want to bring your attention to with these health impacts is black plastic. So as the name suggests, black plastic foodware items are any type of foodware item that is made out of black plastic. So some common examples that you might see in your everyday life would be utensils, the bottom part of sushi takeout containers, some of those longer term use items as well. So spatulas, ladles, and things like that commonly found in kitchens. And recent studies have found that these products can contain flame retardant chemicals. We are thinking that these chemicals are coming from recycled e-waste. So basically think of your keyboards, your mouse, anything like that that's a e-waste component can be recycled, and then these products can be turned into food utensils. We are very concerned about these flame retardant chemicals that are finding their way into these black plastic foodware items because there can be some really grave health impacts associated with them. This can be anything from brain development issues, liver and thyroid issues, as well as reproductive health impacts. Just as another note as well, there are some cost benefits to reusables as well. Our two speakers will be touching a little bit more about this, but just from a perspective from our side of things as well, some case studies in the Bay Area have shown that small food serviceware can typically save between $3,000 to $22,000 annually just by switching to reusable foodware. So now that we are aware of some of these health impacts, the question then becomes, how do we find non-toxic foodware products? That can seem like an overwhelming task, especially on today's market where you have different claims of how healthy products are, but it can be really difficult to cut through that and see what's actually leading up to the claims that they're saying. So overall, CEH does recommend reusable foodware products. This is because these products tend to be the safest, especially if you look for products that are stainless steel, glass, and ceramic, as these are the least likely to off-leach some of these harmful chemicals that we discussed earlier. But we understand that it may not be feasible to immediately switch to reusables. So in that case, there are actually some certifications on the market that allow consumers to be able to determine if other types of products are safe as well. The ones that we recommend would be Green Screen. They have a certification for both reusables and single-use foodware items. And Green Screen Certified covers a wide variety of different chemicals. So this can be anything from PFAS to bisphenols to phthalates to heavy metals. These are all included with the Green Screen Certified certificate. So if you purchase a product with this specific certificate, you know that this product does not contain these chemicals. Another one that we like to mention and talk about is the BPI Compostable Certified Certificate. So not only is this determining whether or not a product that you purchase is compostable, but any products with this certificate are ensured to not have PFAS. So this is just another added layer of transparency and ensuring that your products are as safe as they can be. For restaurants, here are some quick tips to get started on reusables. We first like to say, make sure that you start small and focus on one foodware type. So this can be something like utensils or cups. And this is really just to ensure that you can iron out any challenges that you may have in your system. So if you're first rolling out with cups, you can make sure that your staff are adequately trained up, that there's no issues with dishwashing services or storing services or anything like that. This will help just really ease the transition to a full reusable rollout within your restaurant. Additionally, it can be helpful to identify high priority items. So black plastic items, like we mentioned earlier, as being a specific item that's important for transition, and make sure to focus on these items to ensure that your foodware is as healthy as it can be. Additionally, there are various different models for washing and storing reusables. We know that there can sometimes be issues with not enough space for storing these reusables, or issues with dishwashers, or having a dishwasher that can handle the amount of reusables that you may want to roll out in your restaurant. So there are actually options available for you in these circumstances as well. So for example, there are dishwashing services that are available. And so these services will drop off washed dishes at the beginning of the day and then pick up dirty dishes at the end, wash them overnight, and the cycle repeats. There's also reusables that can be rented so that you don't have to worry as much about storing those reusables or worrying about those upfront costs as well, if that's something of concern. Speaking of resources, and especially financial resources, we know that some of these upfront costs can be one of the major barriers towards a reusable rollout. And so one resource that we really like to point to is plastic-free restaurants. So they are a nonprofit organization. They will subsidize the upfront cost for reusables, especially if you are transitioning from petroleum-based single-use foodware. And so this is just one option available to everyone in restaurants, basically, to help with that upfront costs. Additionally, many local city or county grants may exist to help with these purchases and costs. So, for example, in San Francisco Department of the Environment, they have something called the dishwasher grant. Well, they will provide money to implement dishwashing services in your kitchen space. And so things like that exist out there to help cover some of these financial concerns that may come up when working towards reusables. We understand too that there can be some challenges that come with rolling out reusables, but there are other small ways that restaurants can reduce their plastic usage and overall contribute to a more sustainable environment. So some of these would include condiment dispensers rather than those single packets that you see often. Additionally, you can focus on making some of these foodware accessories, as we call them, so plastic utensils, napkins, straws on request, rather than just automatically giving them to all customers, especially takeout orders. Another tip would be to avoid the most harmful types of plastic. So this can be things like expanded polystyrene. We commonly know that as styrofoam or black plastic, and just make the conscious effort to avoid some of these very specific types of products. Additionally, that can go for things like plastic bags, so moving away from plastic bags for takeout or to-go orders. And then lastly, avoid selling beverages in plastic bottles. So trying to focus on some of those to-go beverages in other containers such as aluminum or glass. Thank you all for listening to that section of the presentation. And with that, I will pass it to Julie Wedge.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Julie Wedge. I am the ReThink Disposable Director in California. We have been working in the Bay Area and around California for the last 13 years. We have converted over 700 restaurants in the Bay Area in that time. Most of them still in business. Huzzah! Because we know that the restaurant industry is a little bit volatile. I'm going to discuss a little bit about our outreach strategies and what we see, overall as, averages in the 700 restaurants that we've converted. You can go ahead and flip the slide, please. So we have found that the average annual savings for restaurants that we convert is somewhere between $3,000 and $22,000. Each restaurant that we have converted eliminates approximately 115,000 disposable packaging items annually as well. That number goes up, interestingly enough, as we were looking at straws and sauce cup kind of conversions. Restaurants use quite a few of those. And so sometimes that number of disposable items can go up pretty significantly, but that's the average, which is about 1,300 pounds of waste and an overall 60% reduction of the targeted packaging items. Go ahead and flip the slide, please. I'm bringing in a couple of recent case studies for you to see what this kind of looks like. Quarter of Brazil is in Contra Costa County. We did a mostly full conversion, what we would consider to be a full conversion for them. Bowls, cups, sauce cups, straws, forks, knives, the whole thing. Their impact is 25,892 individual disposable products, and they're saving a little bit less than our average at $1,289 a year. You can flip this slide. We also did a case study in the Fruitvale in Oakland. We did this for a NOAA grant that we were working on. This was a 5 conversion case study. What we really liked about this particular case study, we put up the switches on powder face, which was oh, I realized that's a typo. It's powder face, if anybody needs to know the actual name of the restaurant. Powder Face did a mostly full conversion, so their savings in this is quite a bit more than some of the other restaurants that did smaller conversions. But you can see that as you start gathering a number of restaurants together in a particular community, these five restaurants are saving 187,600 individual disposable products and collectively are saving $10,192 a year. The smallest conversion that we did on this particular grant was a straw and sauce cup conversion only. We only converted straws and sauce cups. And that particular restaurant is it's about 44,000 pieces of the 187,600 pieces. There are about 44 to 50,000 of those pieces just in straws and sauce cups, and they are saving almost $700 a year. This was the first case study that we've done that included a very small straw and sauce cup conversion. And I won't lie, after 13 years, we were really concerned that this was going to be the first conversion we did that wasn't going to save money, and that we were going to have to really just talk about the health and environmental impacts. So the fact that they're saving almost $700 a year really kind of made us jump for joy. We also have a couple of larger case studies that we've done. We did Gurdwara Temple in Fremont. They serve somewhere between like 1 and 5,000 meals a day and up to 10,000 meals on the weekend. They're open 24 hours a day. So if anybody is around the Fremont area and you're hungry, their food is amazing and delicious, and I highly recommend you go in. It's free. Um, and they converted their entire kitchen to 100% reusable. They, I hear smaller, now when we hear smaller restaurants or even some of the bigger restaurants say things like, well, this is going to add to our dishwashing and we only have a three sink system. I want to say again, they serve up to 10,000 meals a day on the weekends, and they have a three sink system. So, so if they can incorporate it, I promise you, really any restaurant can incorporate dishwashing. And they are saving $45,000 a year that they have been able over the last couple of years to reinvest in other cost savings and water savings and, and other initiatives, because $45,000 a year is a huge savings. I'll go ahead and let you flip the slide, please. I went ahead and did our outreach folks. We go into the restaurant, we find the business owner, we sit down and talk to them, and we're the ones that offer incentive funding. San Francisco offers up to $700 per restaurant to convert. Recycle Smart in Contra Costa County offers up to $600 to convert. When we go into initially, we've been working this contract for almost a year and a half now. We've visited 138 restaurants, and you'll see that at a glance, this is new outreach. We started this a year and a half ago. 76% of all of their restaurants that we visited, all 138 restaurants, are using most or all single use for dine-in. There are places in Contra Costa County, I'm thinking Walnut Creek in particular, that are not in more historically marginalized or environmental areas of concern, that they're at like 56%, I think it was, that are using dine-in reusables. So what we see is that the dine-in disposables, the plastic disposables, are mostly the people who really need the assistance to switch are those smaller mom and pops in areas of concern that don't have $300 to $600 to make the switch or the conversion in their restaurant. They want to do it. They would love to be, participating in money saving, but they can't afford to make that initial switch. So we're grateful for our partnerships with the cities and counties that have incentive funding to be able to work in this sort of smaller niche area of in historically marginalized communities. And if you pop to the next slide. We did 5 years of outreach in Alameda County. 489 restaurants were outreached to, and they are down to 62.2% of their restaurants using most or all of their single-use disposables that we visited in there. That number went down when we first started this in 2022. Um, they were right around that 76-77% that were using disposables for dine-in. They're now down to 62% of the restaurants that we visited that are using. So that number is a little bit misleading in that it seems that they're doing better than Contra Costa County, and I'm going to say that they are doing better than in Contra Costa County, but it's 5 years of outreach work in the area to bring those numbers down. And then just to give you definitions of how we define things, little to none is that the food service business is usually using mostly reusables for dine-in. Most to all is, of course, if they're using most to all. And uncertain, that generally catches people, and it's a question that we sometimes get. Um, Uncertain just means we walked into the restaurant. It may have been busy. It may have not been busy. We may have been able to, we usually just do a visual assessment as we walk in the door because we don't want to bother the restaurant. We don't want to try to find the owner unless it is a restaurant that, really could use the help. So sometimes when we go in and do a visual assessment, it's unclear as to whether somebody ordered to go and then sat there and dined in. And so, that's why they're using disposables because they actually ordered it to go. Sometimes it's just that there aren't enough people in the restaurant that are eating in that we can actually see what they're using for dine in. So uncertain is just in our quick first pass visual assessment, we just weren't sure what they were using for dine in versus, how their clientele was utilizing their foodware. Um, I think that that's mostly my last slide in this. So I think that what I'm going to add, you can go ahead and switch it, or you can leave it here if you'd like. I don't. um, I think that just what I want to add to this is that um, there is a real difficulty in finding the restaurant owner and getting their permission to make those changes. I'm excited for you guys to hear from Leaf because, obviously he did this and made these changes, and can probably make, a much better assessment. But what we do hear from our restaurant owners is that when they make the switch and they are using reusables, that it changes the atmosphere of their restaurant. When you're using disposables, I mean, I just know as a consumer, if I go in and I get disposable foodware, I feel like that restaurant isn't inviting me to stay and isn't inviting me to, sit down and enjoy the meal. They're really just trying to sort of rush me out so that they can get to the next person. And that's fine if that's what your model is. But if what you're trying to create is somewhere where people come and they sit down and they enjoy their meal, then reusables have the additional bonus of making people feel like they're at home, and they makes it feel like they can more sit down and relax. Um, so where we need help from community is getting to those restaurant owners. Because the other piece of it is we do get to those restaurant owners, and it's only about 25 to 30% of them that are willing to convert. There's a variety of reasons for that, and I'm sure Leaf will go into it, but there's a variety of reasons for that. The biggest one we find is that most people think that we're full of it and that we're not actually going to give them free reusable foodware. So a lot of times we'll go in and they'll say, okay, well, yeah, why don't you just grab us some straws and sauce cups? So we'll grab them some straws and sauce cups and we deliver it to them, and they're expecting us to give them an invoice, and we don't give them an invoice. And then all of a sudden it opens up a very different conversation because they realize that, oh my gosh, wait a minute, we are really actually getting free reusable foodware. So a lot of times we'll get our foot in the door with a straw and sauce cup conversion, and then it turns into something larger where they use the remainder of the incentive funding. But sometimes it really is just that straw and sauce cup conversion that moves people into that space. Finally, I'm going to say that we are working right now on 3 national parks, and those case studies will be coming out mid next year. I'm teasing them because it is going to be an incredible, incredible conversion. All 3 of our parks have switched to reusables for their dine-in services. And they all have also switched to water refill stations and aluminum water bottles. So there will be no more plastic water bottles at 3 parks in the United States for purchase. So, be on the lookout next year for that case study coming up. We've got some case studies coming out in Berkeley around Phil's Coffee and Lord's ice cream. And so yeah, where we need your help is talk to your local restaurants. Let them know that these resources are available. Try and find those business owners for us. Tell your favorite restaurant that they can save money and to call Julie and she will help you do that. So thank you for your time. Thank you for inviting me onto this webinar, and I look forward to questions at the end.
Thank you so much, Julie. And with that, I'll pass it over to Neve.
All right. Hello. Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here with you all, and thank you all for joining us for this informative session. And Julie, thanks for all that information. It was great to hear all the other folks that are joining on board. And I think my opinion or perspective on this is maybe a little bit different than maybe some folks that are joining from elsewhere in the country. Since this is a webinar, it can be from anywhere, right? So, for me, I've had my own. I'm the owner of Flying Fish Company. I grew up around a fish market that my family had early on. That was my little oyster bar that I had inside of a fine foods restaurant or fine foods kind of grocery store in my last location. Um, so being in Portland, I've been here since late 2010, and it's a little bit different. I think that the social I don't know, social contract to operate is kind of a word that I had written down is a little bit different. Portland, when I had my fish business set up out in Utah prior to arriving here in Portland in 2010, and in Utah it was a little bit different. The clientele was, less in tune with seafood in general. And I was just selling fish there. I wasn't a restaurant at that point. But when I came to Portland, it was pretty remarkable the response that I had for my values of having being a sustainable seafood operator and making sure that I was sourcing direct from fishermen, and you really knew where these products were coming from, and that is all something that is intrinsically deep in my value as a human, and I feel like we have such a huge impact on this planet as humans do. So I personally have all these values, and this is how I operate my business anyway. But then in Portland, Portland really adopted and loved. They supported me in a big way all the way from the beginning 15 years ago, and then now especially with the restaurant and what we do there. So I guess what I'm saying out of this is that here in Portland, people care a lot more about where the food is coming from, and it's like this. Unfortunately, but part of it is kind of a weird thing, like this cancel culture that happens in Portland, where like if they don't like the general population doesn't like something that a business is doing, then they will picket and boycott and like basically disable the business from doing those things that they don't like. So it's kind of an intense place like that. So do the right thing, otherwise you have these people after you. For me, again, it wasn't a big deal like that because that's my values anyway, that I'm environmentally conscientious, and I make the choices for what we do as a whole for the restaurant, and what we source in the food, and the oil that we use in the fryers is rice bran oil versus shitty canola oil, and that relates to the products that we use. So that's kind of the larger picture of where I'm at with my clientele in the area. I'm in Southeast Portland. It's a good residential neighborhood area. I've got awesome, return customers every week. And so Oh yeah. So when I opened at that location that was in the last photo, and this is the inside of my current location. We've been there for about 6 years. So we had 1 month. It was February of 2020 that I opened at the spot, and we had reusable plates and glasses and all the things to get started with. But then the pandemic hit. So again, I opened in February of 2020. We had a month of this indoor dining like this, and then the pandemic hit, everything got shut down. And I was still able to, because I was a fish market for 10 years leading up, well, 9 years leading up to 2020 when that happened. We still stayed open. We weren't allowed to do on-site dining. Everything got shut down for on-site dining. So there was to go, of course, but to go food doesn't pay the bills, especially for a new restaurant that it was, people were still in the works of getting there. So we went from using, for a month using reusable, regular bowls and plates and stuff that I had inherited from the last restaurant that was in my the building that I took over, the lease that I took over. It was a barbecue place, and I took it over and made it into my fish market and restaurant. So we had a month of operating, and then everything got shut down. We stayed open as a fish market, and we did, fish and chips to go and stuff. But it was really the fish market that paid the bills during those, let's say, 3 months. And then in June, when the governor in Oregon allowed on-site dining to happen again, I had spent those last 3 months from March until June building out a beautiful patio with a fire pit and a tent and a whole thing, coverage and bamboo planters. And when we opened back up, instead of using the reusable plateware and stuff, we went over to using single use stuff. But again, for my values, I wasn't going to use stuff that was styrofoam, of course not. But we use like palm leaf plates that are a sustainable sourced. They're from fallen palm tree leaves, and we use the green plastic, the plantware plastic, so it wasn't petroleum based plastic and that stuff. But it was super expensive. But we didn't want to use the reusable plates because we didn't want the germs from the pandemic, especially those first couple months where there was so much unknown, to be coming back into the kitchen to use those reusable plates in the kitchen. So we switched from reusable plates to single-use stuff, so that we weren't bringing those germs into the kitchen. But the single-use stuff that we were using was still environmentally conscious choices of that. But like I said, it was expensive. So we went on for that though for I don't even remember what it was. I think it was 2 years or so that we used this stuff, and we were literally ordering directly from Verterra was one of the brands that did those single-use palm leaf plates, and there was a couple other brands that we used, and we bought them directly, from the manufacturer through Faire, is Faire is like an online resource for wholesale and for retail, I believe, but we would get them through there. But it was like $2,000 orders of disposable plates, and then the plastic cups, the green-based plastic cups for beer and stuff. So it was pretty significant. So when we finally made that switch, when the pandemic stuff was like still obviously continuing on, because it felt like it continued on forever. But we at a certain point we started to switch into moving back into reusable stuff. So in this photo, you see the stainless steel cups, and then the reusable plates and silverware and that sort of stuff. So I'll talk about the cups first. And Bella, is this the direction that you wanted to go, or did you have some prompts for me to discuss as well? I'm certainly open to whatever format you
No,
wanted.
this is perfect. Yeah, definitely talk about the cups and the bowls and how
Okay,
you brought them in.
great, great. So yeah, so the cups were cool. It was I'm from Sandpoint, Idaho is my hometown, and there's a company up there called Clearwater Gear that's based out of Sandpoint. And I had one of the buddies that I went to high school with, who was one of the sales guys for those guys. So he reached out about doing the stainless steel cups, and then he could do the images on them and stuff, kind of like screen printed t-shirts. But as you see, like my logo on the one on the left, and then on the right, I was a member of the 1% for the Planet. And I'm still a member of, Surf Rider Ocean Friendly Restaurants program. So we got the logo stuff printed right on the cups, and got I think minimum order was it was a couple boxes worth. Maybe it was um, I don't know, 500 cups or so. And, so yeah, so it was an investment, but let's say 500 cups, I think they were maybe $3 each or 250 each or something like that. So you're looking at, let's say, the better part of $1,500, but I was literally going through that much of the green plastic cups that cost, I don't know, 15 cents each or something, 10 cents each, whatever they were. It was maybe a month or two's a supply to switch it from, instead of ordering the plastic cups, to just get the stainless steel cups in. And I was supporting my buddy and another business in my hometown, and plus it was better branding for me anyway. And beer tastes better out of cold metal cups than it does out of plastic, in particular. And that's only for the beer category, but then also for the wine. I'm a casual restaurant, so it's fish and chips, and we've got fish sandwiches and lots of oysters and that. But then we've got we've got a few fancier dishes as well. $30 stuff, but most of my stuff is like $20 stuff, because it's pretty casual place. But what I was going to say is that the beer is one thing that's cold better out of the metal glass, for sure, than out of a plastic glass. But then the next thing that came to my mind when I said that was the wine, and because that was one of the negative pieces of feedback that we had when we were in the midst of that pandemic crap, was I was serving freaking nice Chacolina, Spanish wine or whatever it was, or local wine, out of a plastic glass. It was like, instead of the 16-ounce glass for the beer, we do the half size ones, whatever, the 9 ounces or 6-ounce glasses with a little same green plastic. It was still good choices, but it was still drinking wine out of a plastic cup. So we could only elevate our game so much by serving wine out of a plastic glass. So it was really hard selling somebody an $18 glass of wine out of a plastic cup. Right, Julie? It was just one of those things that you can, that it's just a different mouthfeel, different experience. So that's fine if you are, kind of like what you said about what you're trying to create in your in restaurant, and what kind of environment you're trying to create. Same thing goes if you want to have an elevated game, if you have a more comfortable feel, and that, you've got to have the setting match your offering. And that's always a balance. I've always balanced that, because it's really important to me, the quality of the ingredients that we use, the sustainability of that sort of stuff, the offering that we have. I'm still in, like, my patio still got like the 20 by 30 big tents with the walls and the heaters in them, and it's still on some like blue picnic tables that's in that picture there. So it's like this unpretentious, casual environment, but then I've got a really good chef that has a high level of elevated food, and he does a really good job with a lot of the plates. So it's like this balance with all that, the offering matching what you want, what the food is, and what you're using to serve that food is a representation of the offering that you're offering. So you need to balance that, and depending on what you're trying to be, is also depends on what you're using, and so it's underlying values for that. But anyway, back to the and same with oysters like that. That's a beautiful dozen oysters. My shucker looks like he did a good job on those ones. There's no shell. They look like nice, not mangled. All right, he's not fired today. Good. Whew. He made it. Sam, you're lucky. Just kidding. He's great. There's a couple nice dishes that we use. That's the fish and rice plate on the left, and then the one with the tacos. That's a it looks like a single use. It's kind of similar look to what our palm leaf plates look like, but these are these kind of wood plates that we serve the fish and chips on, and the tacos like that. So they're still reusable, so we don't throw them away. And fortunately, I've been my staff has done a great job. We were just saying the other day, and hopefully that we're not jinxing this by saying it, but we actually have done a really good job not breaking stuff. My chef has been in the business for 20 years, and he's like, it's kind of crazy. He's worked at dozens of different places, and he's like, I've never we actually have a really good non-breakage rate with our staff, not dropping bus tubs worth of glasses or plates, and because that obviously happens in the restaurant business. Shit hits the fan or the floor, and then the restaurant owner pays for new shit, and it sucks, but it happens. So there is that cost it is part of the cost of procurement of getting these reusable plates, but then also there is some breakage that you got to calculate in whatever percentage that is. I'm sure it varies, but fortunately we're pretty lucky that we've been good use, we've got good rates. My employees have done a good job with all that. So yeah, no plastic bags. So we are a member of the Surfrider Ocean Friendly Restaurants program. So a lot of these aspects that are kind of bullet points on these different slides that we're going through are features of the Surfrider Ocean Friendly Restaurants program. And they just did a case study. We were featured as one of their case studies for the beer glasses, for example, and a lot of the other things as well. And we had a talk. We did an event at Flying Fish where a lot of the Surfrider members came and they ate some food, and myself and Dr. Sarah Wolf talked for that, and they kind of asked me what about the program, or was it hard to implement the aspects of the program and to abide by the requirements like this, like no plastic bags, no styrofoam, that sort of stuff. And for me, it wasn't. It was kind of stuff that I was doing anyway. So it was just like, okay, great, yeah, I'll join that program. That's another feather in the cap. It's a stamp that we got that will hopefully validate our credibility for a customer and what we do and what we stand by. But I understand that it's not that way for everyone, that some of these things are hurdles to overcome because they still use plastic bags for the takeout, or different aspects that Surfrider wants you to get rid of if you want to join that Ocean Friendly Restaurants program. For me, it wasn't as much of a problem because those were all values that I did anyway. But there are requirements to join programs like that. But I do think that it helps to create the brand, the label, the who you are as a business or as a restaurant. So that is part of what I wanted to talk about today. Is people notice, just like Julie said, when she walks into these restaurants, and even without talking to the owner, and that, like, you can look around and see what a restaurant is all about and buy lots of those little things. And there's lots of things that people are quite observant, and if you don't pay attention and think that the customers aren't paying attention, you're wrong, and they do. And so, that's also really important to listen to your employees. If you're a business owner listening to this webinar today, it's one of the best things that we were super successful over the pandemic. We actually doubled our revenue in 2020 versus 2019, and then we almost doubled again in 2021. And one of the things that we were successful during those times when there was 80% of the restaurants were shuttering, and because it was so challenging, they had to pivot in that. We were able to pivot so well. And what I wanted to say out of that is that it's really important to listen to your staff. So right now I've got 25 employees. I've got, a general manager and a chef, and then some assistant managers, and then, all the staff. And we were really cognizant of what was happening. A lot of feedback. We were having weekly or biweekly meetings with the management, and really pivoting well to what the customer feedback was and what the staffing feedback was. And you got to listen. You can't, as an owner, we wear so many hats, and we think some people think they know it all, but really, if you do a good job listening to your staff, you're not only going to have better retention, which is hard to do in the restaurant business because there's a lot of turnover in the restaurant business. But you're empowering people to have autonomy and be part of the decision-making process. And Lord, as a business owner, like, hallelujah, give me some help with this. And don't be so egotistical that you've got to make all the decisions because you're just the boss. Like, let that one go. Have some help, listen to the feedback about things to improvement, and that don't take it personally. Just do it for the better sake of the business and the customers, and because they are paying attention. The employees do want to be empowered. They want to be part of something that's special, something that feels good. And when you can get up there and talk about how good it feels to be doing this or that, or making better choices with your food or the products that are they're served on, then it helps the environment. It helps the employees feel better. It really helps you, because again, the least, if we can, any weight that we can take off our shoulders, the better, because Lord knows this business is hard enough as it is. That we can have some additional help doing that, it would certainly help the soul, and maybe it'll earn some years back on the back end. I don't know. We'll see about that. But so yeah, so that's I mean, as you can tell, I could keep talking forever, but I'll maybe end it for there. I think that was most of the things I wanted to talk about. Any questions from you, Bella or Julie?
No, thank you so much, Leaf. But yeah, great segue to the questions. We now have some time for a Q&A session. So let me pull up what we have in the Q&A session and we can get started. So one commenter asks, for Julie, have operators found it difficult or time consuming to clean the straws? Basically, have you had any feedback specifically on reusable straws?
Um, I'm going to say yes and no, right? I'm going to say yes and no to that. If you're someone, if you're working with someone like Leaf, he's going to make sure that his staff understands how to, I mean, it's quite literally just a swipe with a brush and then into your dishwasher. It's not a huge difficulty. Um, but I would be lying to say that there aren't restaurants that the staff doesn't want to do it, and so they'll just throw them away or they get stolen. Straws and sauce cups are sort of number one in the in the people take them home kind of scenario, or they just toss them in the trash because they don't know. So there is a lot of top sorting that, generally will go on in the restaurants that care about these types of things, and they'll actually, sort through their trash and pull out the stuff that people threw away. So I'm going to say yes and no. Some operators find it difficult. Others find it to be one of the better things they do. In fact, in one of the restaurants that we converted in the Fruit Vale, they converted to metal straws, and they serve, things like Jamaica and horchata. And they were talking similarly to Leaf about the reusable glass with the stainless steel straw. Their drinks taste better. So there are very, real meaningful ways in which people are seeing that food actually tastes better when you're not drinking it through or eating it on plastic. And I also see, can I just go ahead and answer the other questions?
Yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna go into the one about the cost
Yeah.
savings. Yeah, go for
Is
it.
there any chance for me to share my screen maybe?
Hey, Julie, just real quick before you go on to another topic, and Bella, just real quick before you go there, I did want to just say two things on that came to my mind, and on that exact topic. As far as the metal cups or the straws walking away, I agree there is always going to be that. We consider that as well with the metal cups. I'm sure there is a little bit. Sometimes for our water cups, we would use different kind of a cup that was like not like as cute as the metal cup that was like out in the beer garden in the waiting area, because that was easier for people to walk away with. So there is maybe a little bit of that, but um, whatever. That's part of the challenge, right? But what I was going to say is that out of that is that we also sell the metal cups in the shop, so you can also make a little bit of revenue from that because people do want to buy a little souvenir in that. So yes, there's a little bit of walk, but there's also some revenue that gets created by making some money from the cup. So there's that aspect of switching over to a reusable, that you can use it as a souvenir piece that somebody could walk away with, buy, and then use elsewhere. Then every time they use it at home, they think of
Yeah.
Flying Fish Company, and that's kind of cool because it's that's part of the value, right? Is to make an impact on somebody, and especially if they can keep seeing that impact later.
Mhm.
It's really special.
And
And then one other, yeah,
I
go
was gonna
ahead.
say, do you feel like it has stopped some of the taking or bringing home of the cups, being able to offer it in the
Sure.
store as well?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
because I don't think most people would want, if they take something, they're going to be like, oh, there's that little bit of like thing that comes with that cup every time they use it is like they nabbed it from there. Some
mhm.
people get satisfaction from that, but most people that's a negative in their persona rather than a positive. So yeah, sure. Sure. And then one other thing I just wanted to mention, you said something about the trash, and it brought up another thing that I was going to mention is that with all those single uses, it was crazy how much more trash volume we were going through. So I had to have the dumpster company empty multiple times per week. So that was costing me thousands of dollars. Well, maybe not thousands of dollars per month, but it cost me extra money per month, hundreds of dollars per month extra when we were using the single use palm leaf plates and all the plastic cups because all of that was going to the garbage, going into the dump, and it wasn't compacted. It was just volume. So that is another aspect that it does cost more money if you're using that single use stuff versus the reusable.
Thank you. And yeah, Julie, screen share's on if there's anything you wanted to add about the how we
Yeah, I was
handle the
just going to
plastic
answer
box.
the questions about how we come to our numbers. Um, Yikes. I can never get this thing out of the way, y'all. I'm so sorry.
No worries, it looks good on our side.
Okay. Um, so this is, if you go onto our website, you can see uh our whole case study scenario that sort of goes on, but this here is the snapshot of what we base our numbers on. Um, so when we went in and did our initial assessment, these were the things that we found that they could change. This is what they decided to change to. The percent disposable reduction is just how much are they doing dine in versus takeout, because we only convert for dine in. So the remainder, like obviously the cold cups, 50% of those are dine in, 50% were for takeout. So we only converted the 50% for the dine in. This will give you an annual disposable product reduction number. So this particular restaurant is saving 360,834 individual pieces of plastic single-use waste from ever even going to the landfill in the first place. And then we obviously convert that into pounds. We have a payback period. What this particular payback period means is how much did it cost for us to replace these stainless steel forks, and how long will that cost take to be recouped prior to them starting to make money on that. So they were paying for plastic. We now paid the stainless steel forks. How long before those forks pay themselves back? And there's no longer a cost to that. And then this gives us an annual net savings per item for, in this particular case, a total of $15,426 a year for this particular restaurant. We do not deal in how much are you saving in trash. We do not deal in how much are you saving in water. Um, Mostly because, frankly, it's hard enough to just get this information of how we've calculate this based on how much are you buying now. So how many plastic forks do you buy a month? How many cases of plastic forks do you buy a month? And so to actually get those numbers on top of it is an additional burden to the owner of the restaurant. So getting things like what are your water savings or what are your trash savings, we would then have to talk to the local agencies and everything. And at the end of the day, what we're converting is the foodware. To answer the breakage question, this does factor in 20% breakage.
20, well,
So we do know that restaurants break stuff. And we know that about 20% of the stuff over the course of the year will get broken on average. So we do add that particular average into our cost savings. But to answer that particular question, it is solely around, we deal solely around foodware. Um, let's see.
And then I know one of the other comments mentioned it, but some of the numbers that I pulled earlier, the $3,000 to $20,000 range, the reason for that large of a range is because it does include some of these smaller items when applicable or when we're able to get some of those numbers. So that's why it obviously has such a wide range. So for instance, yes, if you did have to purchase the dishwasher, that obviously is a much more expensive upfront cost. And so that's where some of that wide range comes from. So yeah, some stats do deal with some of those other items. Some of them, as Julie said, it is just easier oftentimes to get strictly the cost for the reusables themselves.
Um, and and a good recommendation for reusable kids cups, we use Silipint. They're silicone
Mhm.
kids cups, so they're, you don't have the breakage problem because kids will break stuff faster than adults will in your so we have Silipint as an option for people who are looking for non-toxic straws and kids cups. So look under Silipint. Um,
And then I wanted to shout out Jackie's comment. Jackie, founder of Last Plastic Straw. She has a brilliant comment basically about how to commercially wash stainless steel straws. She references Bridger Brewing in Bozeman, Montana, who's been plastic frost straw free since March 2017. Passed the health inspection for their stainless steel straws. She says that they describe the process, which the straws are being done being used. They go into a container in the dish pit area with a pre-soak in it. They keep the straws separate from the silverware in order not to get any food debris in them. They have enough straws that they only run them through about twice a day. So they sit in the pre-soak for a few hours, then they get ran through our high temp industrial dishwasher. We run them through in a small mesh metal container that allows the water to drain out nicely, similar to a device you would keep pencils and pens in. So I thought that was a really interesting comment for people trying to implement straws as well into their restaurants.
and Barbara, to answer your question, the payback period 0.4 is equal to 0.4, like 1 week out of a month. So like 2.5 is 2.5 months. 0.5 is half of is 2 weeks.
We had a question around washable tablecloths and napkins. We've mostly, at least in my experience, have mostly focused on foodware, but I have seen some case studies in more larger scale industries that have implemented tablecloths and washable napkins. So they'll have more of a industrial approach to that, where they'll have someone at the end of the day come in, wash all the tablecloths and napkins, and bring back the cleaned ones in the beginning of the day. Going through some of the questions here. Um, and I know, Julie, you had mentioned earlier about a three sink compartment system. That was really fascinating to me, that they were able to work that many dishes through in a
I
three sink
can't even
compartment
comprehend
system.
it, you guys. I don't even know what to say. I've been out there a couple of times. We really have tried twice in two different contracts to encourage them to get a dishwasher, and they truly just they feel like it's part of their service to the community, and they have an unbelievable volunteer team that
Wow.
washes all of these. So we did have some sample plate scrapes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with plate scrapes, but it's basically like a box that has sort of little brush feature in it,
Mhm.
and you just stick your plate down in it and pull it out so that it will scrape the plate before you wash it, because they weren't even scraping plates. They were
Wow.
just washing and then clearing out their sink. So we did give them a couple of plate scrapes for their stations, for their wash stations, and now they're actually doing food recovery because of the plate scrapes. So they've been able to add composting food recovery to their mission. But it is seriously, if you're at all close to Fremont, even if you don't go there to eat, you should really just go and check out the operation, because I was completely blown away. So they have all stainless steel trays and cups and forks, and every all of their stuff is um sustainable, reusable, and it's shocking that they can get through that many dishes in a day. I would cry if I if I had to go through, 1,000 to 5,000 plates a day and cups and things like that. So, um, yeah,
No,
it's an amazing operation.
that's incredible to hear. So we're nearly at time, so we wanted to thank our wonderful speakers for coming and sharing their time and presenting with us. We wanted to thank everyone in the audience for your wonderful questions, for participating and signing up for this webinar. Again, we'll be emailing out a wrap-up email from this webinar, so this will have a list of resources as well as this recording put on our YouTube channel, the CH YouTube channel, and also our website as well. And so with that, we can wrap it up. And thank you all so much for your time. We really appreciate it. We'll also
Yeah.
have both Leaf's and Julie's contact information if you have any other questions, as well as my own from CEH as well. And thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.